I told myself I was coming to America only for the visa, papers, legitimacy, a future that wasn't choking me dry back home. That was the plan, the narrative I repeated to anyone who asked. But deep down, I knew that stories have a way of unraveling in unexpected places, especially airports. The fluorescent lights at John F. Kennedy Airport burned white against my tired eyes. I had been awake for 19 hours, crossing time zones and borders, clutching my single suitcase as though it contained my very soul. The air smelled of coffee, perfume, and strangers who were already in a hurry. That was when I first saw him. He stood near the barrier, his broad shoulders cutting a silhouette against the crowd. He wasn't like the men who rushed past with eyes glued to their phones. He was still waiting, almost as if he'd been expecting me all along. His name, though I didn't know it yet, was Everett Hale, a name that sounded like it belonged to weathered barns, southern nights, and old family estates. When his eyes found mine, I froze. It wasn't the look of a stranger. It was recognition, like the universe had written his gaze into the script of my life. My grip on the suitcase handle tightened. He lifted a small signboard that read my name, but he didn't need it. That look had already told me everything. Before I go further, if you're watching this, don't just pass by like a ghost. Like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, and in the comments, tell us where you're watching from. Trust me, you'll feel part of the story, and if you don't, you'll regret missing out. We're building something beautiful here, and you belong inside it. Welcome, Everett said, his voice a low rumble that settled in my chest. I want to say something clever, something casual, but my lips only managed a dry thank you. He reached for my suitcase. His hand brushed mine briefly, an accidental graze, or maybe not. It shouldn't have mattered. It was a fleeting touch between two men in a crowded airport. But for me, it was electric. My throat tightened as if I had swallowed fire. We walked in silence through the sliding doors into the thick New York air. The evening was cool, yet the heat between us already hummed like a secret engine. Inside his car, I studied him through the corner of my eye. His profile was strong, the curve of his jaw shadowed in stubble. He smelled faintly of cedarwood and mint, a scent that made me want to lean closer, closer still. So, he said finally, eyes fixed on the road, "First time in the States?" "Yes," I replied. My voice betrayed me, trembling like it carried too much weight. "You like it here," he said, "but it takes stamina to stay." That word lingered, stamina, rolling around my mind like a promise. When we reached his house, I realized it was nothing like what I had imagined. Not a sterile apartment or a government-assigned flat, but warm, lived-in home tucked inside a quiet neighborhood in Queens. The porch light glowed golden, inviting. Inside, he showed me the guest room, but I could already feel my heart tugging toward the pulse of his presence. My suitcase slid from my hand. "Get some rest," Everett said. He lingered in the doorway, his eyes holding mine for 1 second too long. Then he left, closing the door behind him. But I couldn't sleep, not because of the jet lag, but because of the heat that had kindled in my chest at the airport, in the car, in his doorway. I lay awake in a foreign country, knowing full well that the story I told myself, that I had come only for the visa, was already beginning to unravel, and it had Everett's name written all over it. I woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee drifting through the hallways. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The walls weren't mine. The sheets weren't mine, and the silence of Queens was nothing like the restless hum of my old city. When I stepped into the kitchen, Everett was already there. He stood by the counter, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. His back was straight, his frame filling the doorway of morning light that spilled through the window. "You're up?" he said, turning slightly. His smile was small but sure, like he already knew I'd be awake. I nodded, suddenly conscious of the loose shirt I had thrown on. Couldn't sleep much. "Jet lag," he said. "It'll pass." He slid a mug toward me. "Here," strong enough to knock the fog out. I took it, My fingers brushing his again. Another accidental contact, but again, it felt deliberate. The warmth of the ceramic didn't compare to the warmth that pulsed where our skin met. We sat across from each other at the small wooden table. The silence wasn't awkward. It was alive. His eyes studied me, not with intrusion, but with a kind of curiosity that made me want to be seen. "So," Everett said finally, "why here?" I hesitated. The easy answer was the visa, the papers, the chance to build something new. But under his gaze, the truth slipped closer to my tongue. "I thought I was coming for one thing," I said, "but now I'm not so sure." His brow arched slightly, like he heard the layers I didn't say aloud. "Sometimes," he said, stirring his coffee slowly, "you come for one thing, and life gives you another. Takes stamina to keep up." There was again stamina, his favorite word, his unspoken challenge. My chest tightened. Later that day, he showed me around the neighborhood. The streets buzzed with life. Children darting past us on bicycles, the smell of fresh bagels wafting from a corner bakery, the distant rumble of the subway beneath our feet. But what I noticed most wasn't New York. It was Everett. He walked with an ease I envied, like the city bent around him instead of the other way around. When he laughed, rich, full, unexpected, I felt it in my chest. When he spoke to a neighbor in passing, I realized how many people already knew him, trusted him. He carried himself like a man who didn't just exist, he belonged. And that was something I craved. By evening, we found ourselves in a small diner with neon lights humming above us. I ordered a simple meal, still cautious, but Everett ordered like a man who wanted me to taste the city. "You've got to try this," he said, pushing a plate of pancakes my way. His fork sliced through the stack, and he held out a piece to me. It was such a simple act. A fork, a bite. But when I leaned forward and let him feed me, it felt like a crossing. His eyes locked on mine, and for a heartbeat, the air between us thickened into something almost unbearable. I chewed slowly, unable to look away. "Sweet," I managed to say. His lips curved. "Told you." We laughed then, breaking the tension, but the moment stayed, lingering like syrup on my tongue. That night, back at the house, I stood outside my guest room door, staring at the wood grain like it held answers. Across the hall, Everett's door was cracked open. A sliver of warm light spilled into the hallway. I could hear him moving inside, drawers opening, the faint sound of his voice humming low to himself. The intimacy of it, the realness of it, made my heart pound. I almost knocked. Almost. My knuckles even lifted halfway. But then I froze, pulling my hand back as though burned. Instead, I slipped into my room, shutting the door softly behind me. But sleep didn't come. Not again. I lay in the dark, my body restless, my mind repeating every touch, every look, every word Everett had given me that day. And when I finally drifted into uneasy sleep, I dreamed not of visas, not of papers, not of futures I had planned. I dreamed of his voice whispering that same word in my ear. Stamina. And in the dream, I understood exactly what kind he meant. The third night, rain fell heavy over Queens. It pattered against the windows like a steady drum, filling the silence of the house. I sat in the living room with a book I wasn't reading, the words blurring as my mind spun circles around Everett. He walked in quietly, wearing a simple white t-shirt and gray sweatpants, his hair damp from a shower. The scent of his cologne drifted toward me, woody, grounding, impossible to ignore. "You're still up?" he asked, his voice low, like the hour demanded softness. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. He gave a small nod, then sank into the sofa beside me, close enough that the heat of his body reached mine. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The rain filled the silence, a rhythm of its own. Then Everett leaned slightly closer. "I've been trying not to cross lines," he said, his eyes on a rain-streaked window. "But some lines feel like they're meant to be crossed." My chest tightened. My voice came out barely a whisper. "What if I want you to cross them?" His gaze snapped to mine. searching, waiting for me to falter. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not anymore. That was when he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't tentative. It was hungry, claiming, as if he'd been holding himself back for too long. His lips were warm, insistent, and when mine responded, he groaned softly into my mouth, pulling me closer. The book slipped from my hand and thudded to the floor, forgotten. My hands tangled in his damp hair, his fingers pressing against the curve of my back. Every touch was fire. Every breath shared felt like oxygen after years underwater. We stumbled together down the hallway, his lips never leaving mine, his hands exploring with a reverence that made me tremble. By the time we reached his room, my shirt was halfway off, his teeth grazing my neck, my pulse hammering so loud, I thought the walls would hear it. Inside, the rain became background music. The world shrank to the heat of his body against mine, the way his breath caught when I whispered his name, the raw need that tangled between us. We didn't rush. Every kiss deepened, every touch built higher. He moved with that same stamina he always hinted at, patient, steady, unrelenting. He knew when to press harder, when to slow, when to let silence speak. When he finally entered me, it was slow, deliberate, his eyes locked on mine, as if to say, "You're safe. You're wanted. You're mine." I gasped, my fingers clutching the sheets, and he kissed me again, swallowing the sound, turning it into something holy. The rhythm built gradually, waves rising, cresting, crashing. He whispered my name like a prayer, his forehead pressed to mine, sweat glistening on his skin. Every thrust was a promise, every kiss an anchor. And when release came, it wasn't just physical. It was like something in me shattered and rebuilt in the same breath. I cried out his name, my body arching into his, and he followed, collapsing against me, both of us trembling, both of us undone. I woke tangled in his sheets, my head resting on his chest. His arm was draped protectively around me, and for the first time since landing in America, I felt more than safe. I felt home. Everett stirred, his lips pressing against my hair. "Morning," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. "Morning." I whispered back, smiling against his skin. We lay there for a long while, saying nothing, just breathing together. The rain had stopped, and sunlight now filtered through the curtains. Finally, he tilted my chin so I looked at him. "You know this isn't just one night," he said softly. "I don't want it to be." My throat tightened, but I nodded. "Neither do I." He smiled then, the kind of smile that said he'd been waiting for this as long as I had. And when he kissed me again, slow, tender, sure, I knew it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I had come for a visa. I had stayed for the stamina. But what I found was love.